Now it's time to meet the first of our artists, Anindita Banerjee. She grew up in Kolkata and is an artist working in textiles and video and ephemeral installations and performance. And in her practice, she recreates rituals from memory and puts them into unusual contexts. Would you please welcome Anindita Banerjee?
I describe myself as a twice-uprooted Indian. Now, why do I call myself a twice-uprooted Indian? Okay, the last 7 years of my life I have spent in Australia. And before that, I've lived in US for 6 years. And going backwards, in this very Facebook life of mine, I was born and brought up in India. And while I was growing up and doing these touristy things mostly, I think, as my Facebook life suggests, deeper and more powerful thoughts started pestering me. Words like home, identity, authenticity, etc. suddenly became the foundation on which every conscious or unconscious thought of mine was based on. And thus started a practice-led research or inquiry to unpack this disquietude that I was living with. Displacement, another big word. But while this was going on in my head, what I thought was, what better way to start this inquiry than to look back and dig into my own past experiences. This is an image of when I was 4. And this image became the inspiration of my first experiment in this inquiry or this practice-led research that I started. This is from when my grandmother, I'm 4 here on the right. This is from when my grandmother conducted a ritual called Kumari Puja on me. So I was 4, innocent, bereft of worldly desires, calm, contented, and joyful. They decided, they as in my grandmother, my family, everybody in the society that I knew, or I was supposed to know, decided that I fitted into the schema of the goddess. She is 34, spirited, mature, compassionate, and a fighter. This time I decided that she fitted into the schema of the goddess. In this work, I reconstructed from my assembled memory the sacred ritual of the Kumari Puja and performed it on somebody who had no understanding of it and at a place that had no resemblance to its ordinary existence. And I guess why I tried to do something like this was to actually find out the confusion and highlight the confusion that is around identity as far as immigrant artists, immigrants in general are concerned. After the adrenaline rush that this piece gave me, I started deliberating with the idea of playing with the materiality of the alpona. The alpona is a ritualistic mark making. It's a traditional floral design that we make, and it comes from the eastern parts of India. The medium used is rice flour and water. I don't know if you've noticed, but when you walked in today, I have done a piece earlier this morning, and there is parts of it left at the entrance. Maybe have a look when you go out. So what I am trying to focus on now is to break down each of these elements of the ritualistic drawings in order to push them further and test their limits. While playing with the materiality of the alpona, the idea of using the Pancha Mahabhuta, so the idea of playing with the Pancha Mahabhuta, the 5 great elements, stemmed from the light bulb moment of taking off the rice flour as a medium from the traditional drawing medium of the alpona and leaving behind only water. Water then spontaneously led me to think and link it with fire. And then slowly I moved on to the other elements. So in this play of materiality with the alpona, fade is the first piece in this series where I reflect on how the conversation about the cultural other is a continual meditative process The voice can't be raised just once, or else it fades. Here is a quick silent video to give you an idea of the 3.5-minute performance piece that I made and which is playing at the Gaffer Gallery as part of this exhibition. This piece went on to win the People's Choice Award at the Wyndham Contemporary Art Prize last year, which I still feel excited about. So I thought I'll just share it with you. Moving on, the next element that I work with is fire. So water, and then the obvious next relation was the fire. Here I attempted to demonstrate the anxiety among the cultural other who struggle to establish their identity in contested places like the diaspora. For this piece, I made 9 separate Alpona-based designs by hot gluing 20,000 individual matchsticks. Okay, this was meant to be very dramatic, guys, but okay. This year is particularly exciting for me because my making phase, as I call it, I spend about 9 months of a year making. The making phase will be dedicated to a very specific cause. So after, trying to get through difficult words and trying to understand, unpack difficult words like the cultural other and things like that, I realized that we are living in a land which is very contested on its own. So moving into the land part of my Panchabhuta that I spoke about earlier, moving into that land phase of my series, what I am going to try and do this year is to validate my practice in the context of this new country that I call home and its original traditional owners of the land. I therefore end today's talk with an image of my version of acknowledgement to country. Thank you.